Chris McKenna is the founder of Protect Young Eyes, an organization set to help families, schools, and churches create safer digital environments, as well as provide tools and resources to help parents navigate the online world most of our kids live and interact in. Welcome to Context, Chris.
Hi, Maggie. Thank you so much for having me.
So how easy is it for young people to see pornography on social media platforms like Snapchat, Instagram, and TikTok?
Easier than I think parents want to admit. Anything that allows, and it's been this way since the beginning of the internet. My general statement, Maggie, has been that any platform, any app, no matter what its purposes, if it allows human beings to upload content, no matter how strong its community guidelines are, whatever moderation practices it has in place, it's always going to have pornography in some way. You may have to dig deep to find it, or sometimes you don't, but it's always going to be present. And what's interesting about that is in parents' minds, we have a pretty black and white sort of view of pornography. You often think of the magazine or that very obvious form of pornography that maybe was around when we were growing up, or some VHS tape that was hiding under somebody's mattress, right? But that is so much different than the pornography that exists today that I could unpack further. But I think that's a big thing that parents need to understand is this is not the porn that we grew up with.
Yeah, and that it's everywhere. So in your opinion, the conversation that's happening here in Canada is about age verification on some of these sites. Do you think that's a reasonable safeguard against early access to porn, is having these age verification tools?
I think age verification is important. It's how we prevent young people from accessing places that we don't want them to access in the physical world. Now, I know that's complicated in the digital world because whether it's in Canada or the United States, we have adults who have rights to certain places, and we need to be careful to guard those. And I'm very much a proponent of that. But I've also seen very simple applications employ some very simple techniques to make sure that young people are, in fact, guarded and an adult has said, yes, you can be here. I remember very vividly during COVID when my son was using a very popular app called Among Us, which went viral all over the world, right?
Yeah.
Kids used it all over the
Yeah.
place. But when my son said that he was 9, even though it was a 9+ app, the app stopped and said, hand the device to a parent. And I had to put in a credit card number, and it put a micro charge of a penny on my card and then took it off of my card. But to verify that I was an adult who was allowing my 9-year-old son to use the game Among Us, which has very minimal risk, yet they were doing an awesome job of making sure that if it was a child using the app, then they had certain controls around the texting in the meetings that took place, that they couldn't be freehand texting and commenting if they were 9 years old. So I loved that very simple approach. And there are many ideas like that that could be replicated to prevent young people from being in places they shouldn't be.
Yeah, I love that idea. And yes, Among Us is very popular in our household as well. So what are the real life risks, Chris, of early access to porn for our young people?
Pornography is a supernormal stimulus. Therefore, it fires up the brain. Whether you're 4, 14, or 40, right? It fires up the brain in ways that we were created to be fired up, right? So that we are attached emotionally, spiritually, physically, and relationally to another human being, my spouse. And so the risk is that when young people see pornography, one of the most egregious risks that we need to be careful of, and I hear this over and over again, is that when young people see porn, young people sometimes practice pornography on each other because young people have mirror neurons. We lose these as an adult. But this is why young people have an uncanny ability to copy the things that we say and do, sometimes embarrassingly, right? If we're a parent, we know this, right? And so the one thing, as I've talked to there are childhood assessment centers here in the town, the city that I live in, and they work with families who are either the victims of sexual abuse or who have a child who has sexually abused another child. And the number one common denominator that all of the children during the year that I interviewed them had in common for those who had abused other children was all of those children had an early childhood exposure to pornography. Because what they see on the screen, they feel neurologically compelled to do. What they see, their gross motor skills want to play out. And that's not a good and bad kid thing. We often think those are bad kids. Those are good kids who saw something that neurologically was so overstimulating that they felt like they had to do something about it. And that's just one of the many things that we need to be aware of. It's teaching our young people, especially in the teen years, a version of sex that is not real life. That is not love and respect and treatment of others. And so these are just a couple of the many risks that we need to be aware of when it comes to early exposure.
Oh, so much to learn and so much to be aware of as a parent. Thank you so much, Chris McKenna from Protect Young Eyes. Thank you for your time today.